So the dead and the starving of Somalia already knew it. Now the United Nations has confirmed it. The severe drought in the Horn of Africa has reached famine conditions. And by any standards, the growing number of victims is truly staggering. The UN's food agency says that now 12 million people need emergency aid, with hundreds amongst that lot dying every single day. In the regions where famine has been declared, close to a third of the population is suffering from starvation and mass displacement. And that sent the UN cap in hand to the international community. It now needs $300 million over the next 2 months, and that amount simply to feed the hungry. Mohamad Adow has our report.
It's now official. Parts of Somalia are in a state of famine, the first in the 21st century. The United Nations humanitarian coordinator for Somalia, Bowden, outlined what he called the shocking severity of the problem. The Lower Shabelle and Bakol regions in the south, Somalia's traditional food-growing areas, now suffer from famine, with malnutrition rates there the highest in the world.
The rest of southern Somalia is close to famine conditions, and it is likely that conditions will deteriorate further in the next month.
3.7 million people, almost a half of Somalia's population, need urgent help. Many are on the move. In a desperate flight to escape death, they're making their way to overcrowded refugee camps in neighboring Kenya and Ethiopia. At least $300 million is needed to alleviate the immediate suffering. The announcement of famine in Somalia is meant to act as a wake-up call to the rest of the world. The response from donors and regional government has so far been slow, and aid agencies are lamenting what they call a catastrophic breakdown in the world's collective responsibility to act. Officials say more than food aid is needed if the situation is to be contained.
The current situation can only be alleviated if we make sure that the people remain where they are. And if we create the condition for the people to go very fast back to produce their own food, instead of depending on support from others. If we don't give hope to the people, people will move out, and the disaster will spread around and multiply by a factor that we will never be in condition to control.
Accessing the most disparate of Somalia's population is proving difficult for most aid agencies. The ongoing conflict and insecurity, poor infrastructure and bureaucracy in neighboring countries where most of the aid passes through are causing huge delays. And with no rains expected till the end of the year, there seems to be little hope for Somalia's people. Mohamad, Al Jazeera, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, Somalis have been fleeing to neighbouring Kenya in search of food. And earlier we spoke to the Kenyan ambassador to the United Nations. He says the situation in his country is also dire.
There are many aid agencies that are in Kenya, including the Kenyan government itself has systems in place ready to move and to respond to the challenge that we are facing both in northeastern and eastern Kenya. This is the second major drought that we are facing in less than 3 years. The last one having been in 2008. We are now caught up in a situation where the failure of the crop has been extensive. But we must also understand that there are complications that have to do with the crisis in Somalia on our border, on our eastern border. Many of the people that we are trying to respond to in Kenya are actually Somalis who have been forced out of their country because of the war. And the war, climate change, drought, all these situations have come together to make this a particularly difficult condition. Has the international community failed? I wouldn't say so, but there is clearly a need for them to respond with urgency. The fact of the matter is that of the $500 million that has been requested, half of it has been funded. The challenge now is to make sure that the other half comes online as soon as possible and is dispersed as soon as possible.